Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Explode Your Expert Business Show. This is the show for experts who want to become the ultimate authorities in their field while making an impact in the world. My name is Simone Vincenzi. I'm your host. And every week we bring you new episodes with either as a solo episode where I talk about strategies or things that happen in the GTeX world, or we interview incredible guests like the person that we have today. If you want to grow your coaching and speaking business, but you're a bit confused, you don't know where to start, we have created an awesome resource which is called the Ultimate Expert Checklist. And this is a checklist that it will take you about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to complete, but it will give you a full picture of where you are in your business, what you need, what are the next steps for you, so you can get the clarity to move forward. So if you want it, make sure you scroll and check in the show notes and download it straight away. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet to the show, make sure you subscribe. Having said that, it's time to get started with the interview. And today I have the one and the only Julieanne O'Connor. Julieanne is an award winning 2 times published author, actor with a viral Super Bowl commercial, which I have a few questions about that, a TEDx, and there are going to be some good stories coming up from this TEDx, and NSA speaker, a wife, mom, and foster mom. Her mission is to put relate back into relationships worldwide. Julianne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Simone. It's such a pleasure.
All right, Super Bowl. Let's get straight into it because we're going to talk business and how you grew your business. That's coming in a moment. But first things first, Super Bowl. Really?
Yeah.
What
Okay.
happened?
So
How it happened? Tell us more.
you'll laugh. Okay. So the Super Bowl commercial that I'm in went massively viral, and no one would have ever dreamed going into this. We made a homemade video. Okay, at my home, and used my brother-in-law's dog. And we created this video and we entered it into the Crash the Super Bowl competition for Doritos. And never had, never dreamed in a million years it would turn into this massive thing. So anyway, long story short, one thing led to another, and it might inspire some people to know that literally we sort of played with social media, and we put together a team and we strategized how can we kind of tackle this. So you do Twitter, I'll do Facebook, and everybody took a different segment, and then it just started to get this following. And then I thought, well, okay, well, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to find a cause. And if we end up at the Super Bowl and I get this contract, then I'm going to pay a percentage to a cause. So I picked 2 causes, reached out and said, hey, I'd like to, donate when we win. Of course, we don't know that we're going to win. And that led to them sharing on social media as well. Pretty soon I had CBS on my doorstep, and it just, spun out of control. And so it's been seen by hundreds of millions of people. And honestly, I just got another contract, which is insane. And they're airing it again this month. CBS airs it almost every year as one of the best Super Bowl commercials of all time. So, but it started literally in my front yard. So most people don't know that part.
That's insane. And I like to relate things to business. Like, how do you think this experience, where, like, what's the lesson for you actually? What's the lesson for you in this experience of the Super Bowl that can
Yeah.
relate to business and everyone who is listening right now?
Yeah. So, there were so many lessons. It was such a fascinating experience because it started with friends, and, it started with collaboration. And we literally sat around coming up with ideas to, figure out, first of all, what kind of a commercial we would do. Then we enrolled literally even our neighbors to help us with producing it. And we had a neighbor who was like holding the plexiglass door on a string and helping. And we sat around and we literally just came up with, bat and back forth, and we narrowed it down to 2 ideas, and we did both. And then through the process, as we started to get this insight that there was this opportunity that we could actually air during Super Bowl. Now, I was already an actor, and my thinking was, oh, then I have bragging rights, like, I've got to do this. So I was committed. And then the other players involved had money at stake. And then I also had money at stake now. But I didn't go into it with the money piece initially. It was just all fun. And then as it rolled out, I started to really look for the opportunities to actually make it happen. And one of those opportunities that I think a lot of businesses should consider or think about is that it really came back to that giving piece. So as soon as I realized that by collaborating with these high-end charities that they would share, and then you had this expansive, reach. And then I even reached out to a tiny, tiny little publication in my small town. And I wrote a story about, hey, this is what we're doing. And I wanted to promote those charities. So I plugged them in it. And they went and ran with that. So then I took that little teeny article and I sent it to the next size article. And, the next size publication, I should say. And they went, oh, and then they rolled it out and they, spun it off. So I think a lot of times people look big and they forget to go back to the steps that lead to it, and it looks like this massive success. But if you didn't know how we put one foot onto, in front of the other and how we took these little steps, I don't think you would know that, it was really a simple point of strategy, really.
Tell us a bit more about your business. What kind of things are you doing at the moment and are you involved in?
Oh my goodness. So, my love, my passion is really about quality of life. And I have niched into the field of dentistry, if you can believe it. I'm not a dentist, which is interesting, but I have a lot of friends who are dentists, and I run a dental training institute, and I do social media. No surprise, I'm sure, especially because I learned from that experience so much. And so I do social media for dentists and other businesses as well, but primarily dentists. And it's a done for you type of business. And then I also coach dentists. So there's kind of this overlap of what you see that people need a lot of times. And so I have just a couple of areas where I really focus, but it all comes back to, outsource so you can have more quality time, outsource the things that you can outsource or that you really don't enjoy doing, and really focus on what matters to you most and spend time with your friends and family, because man, last year gave us all some perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. It certainly did. There are definitely a lot of changes that happened. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, in the social media world, because
Yeah.
I'm sure that we can use dentists as an example,
Mhm.
but the message that a dentist would put before COVID might be quite different of the message that people are putting out on social media now. So in the work that you're doing in social media, how have you seen the message evolve over the past, let's say, 12 months?
Wow, it's been huge, and I really learned from not only my own experience, because I had a huge chunk of people. There was a day I was writing down as fast as I could the cancellations, because the first thing people cut is their marketing budget, right? When there's this panic. And I remember, and that never had ever in the history of my business happened before, where I would have multiple cancellations in a day, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and really good people. And so it forced me to think about, how can I help those clients? And
Mhm.
so I literally went and flipped it around, and I reached out not only to the ones having a really hard time, but everyone else who hadn't canceled. And I said, if you need a couple months of free social media services, I'm going to do that for you. And it took we took a huge hit, and there were people who took us up on it, and including all the people who canceled. And now guess what? We got most of those back. Right. And so I kind of shared that message through their, and, all the way to their end users, which are their patients, which is, you got to go back and now look at the people who you serve and see how you can help them. And so their social media messages really shifted to, look, we are focusing on safety. We are focusing on, price points. And sorry, my computer just went raw. Earthquake. I'm in
Like
Los
when you're
Angeles.
excited to talk about something, then it's like I'm do the same. I knock the microphone, and I'm Italian, use my hands a lot, so sometimes I knock the microphone, sometimes I knock the lights. And
Right?
if you're listening, you don't have, maybe you're not watching on YouTube, but you're listening. Sometimes when we get quite animated, we can throw punches at the screen or the laptop. So that's the thing what
Simone,
happened in this
I'm just
moment.
so excited to be able to be on your podcast and speak with you right now. It's like,
Oh,
after your TEDx talk about sleeping with your, your
living with
clients.
your clients. I know disclaimer. Like if you haven't, if you're listening right now, you haven't watched my TEDx talk, go and watch it after this episode. Of course,
Yes.
finish the episode first. And it's called sleeping with your clients. But disclaimer: never slept with one of my clients. So just leave it at that. Watch the TEDx talk and you understand why. Back to you.
Well, first of all, it's a great TEDx talk, and everybody should absolutely watch it. Secondly, it's funny, and you play a didgeridoo, if I even slightly
Yeah,
came in the
yeah, yeah.
ballpark, and you don't play it like anyone I've ever heard play it. You do you, and I was so like I was moved. I was like, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a really fun TEDx talk. In fact, we'll have to talk more about that offline because I'm collaborating with a bunch of TEDx speakers right now, and you're definitely a fit.
Awesome. I'm looking forward. Maybe there's the next Super Bowl ads. Who
Right?
knows?
Yep, exactly. Instead of Doritos Pug Attack, it's going to be the, I don't know, Simone sleeping with clients attack. I don't even
I
know.
don't,
I've
I
got
don't,
nothing.
I don't know if I want to be known for that. You might actually backfire. But so we were talking about social media and
Yeah.
how you retained your clients and the message of being there for them and supporting. And I gotta say, it has been something that. And I'm one of the reasons why we had very few cancellations during COVID for us,
Yeah.
considering that our predominantly before the pandemic our event was an event business. So we were normally, our clients were normally people that will not like online training. That's why they were coming to us, because we were running training in person, and all our ethos is about community, connection, doing things together, creating a platform for people to meet and connect and create meaningful relationships. That's all about, that's what we stand for. And so that shift immediately, what we didn't even have the time to think about, oh my god, there is this pandemic happening, we can run events. Because now we have about like 600 clients that they are struggling. And so we said, if we actually focus everything, we went together with the team, it's like, well, let's focus every single inch of our life, our creativity, into how can we make our client feel connected, and how can we increase our support. And that looks like what you've done as well for your clients.
Yeah, it got so intimate that literally I would call some of my clients just to check in and say, how are you? How are you guys doing? And some of my clients went under. They went under during the pandemic. They literally could not sustain their businesses. And you're talking about people you would never have dreamed of. Not to get really serious here, but I have two people who, in the last couple of months, committed suicide, including one of my co-trainers who was very successful. So you have this thing going on where people are taking a look at their lives, and some people don't even know that there's this support system of people who care about them in business. And I think that is where you have this opportunity that's massive, because you would think some of my clients are so high level. They're, high achieving CEOs and dentists, multi-million dollar practices. And they're so successful that you almost wouldn't think to reach out to them, right? Because you're just like, they're fine. And they're not. So I think we have to connect. I think if you run your business based on connection, you will always survive, and you will always come back, right? And you will thrive ultimately. And you do it, and you talk about it. I listened to some of your other just even snippets of some of the events that you've spoken at. And first of all, you're one of the most dynamic and energetic speakers I've ever seen on stage. Okay, so anyone who's booking a speaker, including myself, I want you. And then Secondly, you fundamentally come back to changing lives as kind of a baseline. It's not about business matters, but it's got to matter based on your why, what you want to do, how you want to change the world, or even in small ways, how you want to, impact people's lives. And I think the other thing just to throw in, and I'll shut up, I swear, and this is a podcast, it's
Well,
supposed to be
you
today.
don't have to shut up. I'm interviewing you, so ideally, for the success of the episode, keep talking.
No, but I think there's a couple things. It's not only it's not only this connection piece, but it's also this idea around perfection. you know I think that some of us, especially if we're in the press, right, and you talk about, and you do this for clients, right, where you get them or you teach them to really get a lot of press and notoriety and all this stuff. And I just think that when you are somebody who people look up to, or you're an expert in the field of whatever your field is, then you almost are afraid to show your vulnerability sometimes. And you're also afraid to admit that you're struggling when you're struggling. And there's nobody who wasn't affected by the pandemic, and still to this day, right? So I just feel like we got to relate more and accept that, hey, you know what? We're not all perfect. Everything is not as good as it was the year before last right now, in terms of your bottom
I'm
line.
totally with you. I'm totally with you. I'm lucky I have my wife, because I
Yeah.
can just go hard mode, and I even forget just to check in with myself. Hey, how are
Yeah.
things going? And when I realize it, it's often too late. Well,
Yeah.
we always joke with my wife that she's got spider senses, and she can spot if I'm not well before I even have like a little glimpse of it. And she's like, "Are you okay?" But yeah, sure, I'm fine. And she goes,
Yeah.
"I think you are not, but if you need to talk, I'm here."
That's
And
amazing.
and then what happens normally? I'm like, "Yeah, don't worry, I'm fine. I'm doing my things." And then 5 days later, "Oh, baby, I'm not gonna
Ah!
get." And it's so important to have that external support, and also because the bigger the business, the bigger the team, the more clients you are supporting, the bigger the game we are playing, the bigger support we need, because the more responsibility there is. I mean, for
You
me,
feel that.
I felt the pressure. I'm like, okay, we have 18 people between full time and contractors are working with us. They all have families.
Mhm.
They all have, like, there were moments. Fortunately for us, the year, actually, because we didn't spend so much money, even if we made less money than the year before, we actually were more profitable, because we didn't spend enormous amount of money in venues, which is one of our biggest costs of running events. So the year turned out really well for us. Mwah, I'm blessed. Uh, but even even in that situation, like, there were moments even before in other years where I took out personal loans to pay our staff members, because I didn't want them to not pay the rent, or to go. I knew their personal situations and so on. And so there is pressure.
Mhm.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that the bigger the game we play, the more support we need. And I'm still learning that lesson. This is one of these things that this spiel is more a reminder for myself than for anyone else right now. But
Yeah. I'll add to that that this is multi-layered. I think sometimes that we put each other on a pedestal, or some of us look, we feel all this pressure because we're at the top of, our business, or, the top of the food chain in our business, so to speak. But even as somebody on lower, you can do the same thing. And so if I'll give you an example, myself, I work with I won't even say, but I work with a lot of different clients. And sometimes I'm hired to help, with whatever. And during this, I also went to those people who are hiring me and said, look, let's cut what you pay me in half. Let's do this. And so in
Mhm.
addition to the clients, the social media clients, I said, let's do this for the next 6 months. That helps you because you are the one who has the most pressure because you're above me. You are that person who's taking that on. But I think ultimately, just going back to having somebody who checks in with you, whether it's your wife or somebody else, I'm really speaking a lot more about mindset and burnout and addressing this topic. And I will tell you that I burned out working from home myself because I didn't have anyone checking in with me except my family, and I was working harder for less, reward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there were some days where I just literally got depressed, and I teach about this. I know the strategies. And so I had to go back and implement my own strategies. I had to force myself to go back and say, whoa, you got to walk away. You got to do these certain things. So I think it's an interesting thing that this has happened, because it's made us all look at what really matters in life, and what we want to do, and what the trade-offs are that we're willing to take.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying don't be a hard worker. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. But I do think you need to block out time, and you work really hard now, and then you give yourself this time, and you spend this time with your family, and you don't compromise it. You know what I mean?
I'm curious now to talk about, because I think we can make it very practical now. On There are definitely people that have done what you did,
Mhm.
cut their prices, or help give extra support to the client, to not only keep the business, maintain the business, and as well grow the business. Some people to keep the business afloat, some people just to pay their bills, and some people also that help them grow. Like everyone in this, I don't want to buy into the scarcity of every business going down. That is not true. I've seen plenty of businesses that had their best year this year, and so on. So uh, but if when you were, can you describe a moment where you had either like you woke up and you maybe were depressed, or you couldn't, you burn out? What did you do to get out from that situation?
Oh, that's such a great question. So there's a few things that I will do. So if I get really down, and at first I wasn't doing this, okay, just to be, I had to force myself, because really what I wanted to do was go watch Netflix, without, or drink a glass of wine. That's what
Hmm.
I wanted to go to the crutches. But instead, what I did is I went and I forced myself to write down exactly where I'm at, and literally just top of head, this is where I'm at, and acknowledge, oh, this is a fear, this is where I'm at, this is blah 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 blah, and I just made a list really quickly of where am I at. And then it's kind of, it's therapeutic, if you will, to get it out and just acknowledge it and accept it. And then I did a list of everything that I wanted, everything I actually desired, so that I could kind of, lighten that, and go, okay, what do I, what is something that I'm looking to have or gain, or whatever that is. And not just business, but personal. You combine everything comes to your heart. Then what I did is I made a list of my why, and why do I want this? So, because now you check in with, oh, I want a new car, for example. Well, why? Is there really a good reason for this? Maybe is it an appearance thing? Is it because you want your family to have safety? Like you start to really check in on
Yeah.
these things. And then everything on my why list, I would narrow it down even further. So let's say the why is because I want to spend more time with my family. Well, why is that important? That's important to me because, I love my family, and then you just keep asking that question till you get to the very baseline of why you do anything. And then if all those things still matter, you do a bridge, and you write down how you're going to get from where you're at to what you want. And it's powered now by what really matters. And you'll scratch some things off that really doesn't matter. In fact, I'd rather not have the car if that means I have debt, because what really matters and my why is my family. You start to, and I use that's a really dumbed down example, but it, I think, portrays, what we often do, which is we set these goals that don't even tie into what we care about. So I hope that's
I love
helpful.
it, and I invite everyone to rewind and re-listen to this part, because you're right. When stuff happens, and when we are frustrated, when we are burnout, the immediate thought is to numb down. I don't want to think about it. I just want to escape, because I don't want to really face what's the real issue. It all happens at a subconscious level. For myself, I was like, I'd rather watch my basketball game. I'll watch this, I'll watch that, instead of really just spending some good old time with myself, get real, and really explore what is going on. And if you struggle to do it on your own, you might have to have a conversation with someone else. There were plenty of times where I hired someone to have this kind of conversation during, thank you, during 2020 and before, just because, first of all, I cannot put everything on my wife. She's my wife, not my therapist. And on the other side, I want to go where my mind doesn't want to go. And sometimes our mind is there, actually, most of the time, is there to protect us and to stop us from going there because it's uncomfortable. And so that's why I love what you just shared. And have you ever read the book or listened to the audiobook of The Values Factor?
What is it called?
The Values Factor.
Oh no, I
Dr.
don't
John
know why.
DeMartini.
I'm gonna get it.
Dr. John DeMartini from The Secret. I was blessed to speak at an event with him and interview him also for this podcast. So check out the interview that we did for everyone who is listening. Dr. John DeMartini. If you put "Explode Your Expert Business Show," you will find it. And it talks a lot around why people do things, why people make decisions, what are the values that drive us subconsciously, and the decision and the escaping mechanism that we will implement in our life to serve a particular value. The exercise that you shared is very similar to one of the things that you shared to get to the point, to the core of what's going on. So make sure, rewind if you're listening, and implement this exercise.
I love
Um,
it. Yeah, 4 steps. Where you're at, what you want, why, and bridge the gap. How are you going to do it? So it's
I
really
love it.
simple.
I have one more question, actually two more questions before we wrap up. One is, you said in your introduction, you put relate back into relationship. Huh?
Well, okay, so this is and anytime someone says, well, it goes back to when, you're like, oh God, don't go way back. but this really does go way back, and I'll do a really fast way back. How's that? So I grew up on really contaminated property. I grew up on a property that had such bad contamination that literally the ground was contaminated, the air above the soil was contaminated, and I lived there, for many, many, many years without knowing. My father passed away from lymphoma cancer. We didn't know why. And then one day we found out why. And the property, to give you an idea of how severe it is, no one can ever inhabit it again. It's a 100-year cleanup right now. It's really severe. So sort of the Aaron Brockovich story without the multi-million-dollar ending. And so when that happened and I started seeing doctors, they would bring me in and tell me that there was a high likelihood that I would get cancer from what I had been exposed to at that point. And so it made me evaluate really my life and what mattered. And I was young. But I sort of started to go, okay, well, if you're stripped of everything, your business, all, everything that's material in nature, then it kind of leaves you with, this, so what do you care about? And it's always your relationships, always. So I kind of set out on this journey to find out, really a mission to find out what created happy relationships. And at the time I was boy crazy. So I asked people, couples primarily, what's the secret to a happy marriage? And it was like 9 out of 10 were complaining, and 1 out of 10 was having a really good time. And it was so clear to me what the one did different from all the rest. And so and then I ended up writing a book about it, not because I wanted to be an author, but because I thought people should have these keys and know and understand that really what matters are relationships, and it's really not that difficult to build meaningful relationships. So I hope that answers your question.
It definitely answered my question, and I can totally relate to, no pun intended,
He
to
can't
what
help
you're saying.
himself. And that's it, folks. We're out. No,
I'm so funny.
no, I'm just,
So I can definitely relate to
you're
what you're
so
saying.
great. I love it.
Thank you. Because my wife and I, in the first year of marriage, we had a really rough time.
Mhm.
And so it was like, well, before we were engaged, it was great. Then we got married, crap time. And so we went to a therapist, to a couple
Yeah.
to a marriage counselor, therapist. Don't even know what's the title, but he just sorted us out. And it was about the way we were communicating with each other and the way we were relating to each other, and so on. So I
Mhm.
can definitely understand what you're saying. And this ability to connect deeply with someone, to understand them, and to make that first step.
Yeah.
This is not just useful in loving relationships, but also in business and in any
Yeah.
in friendship and any other areas. I've got one more
Yeah. And I'll,
question.
okay. Yeah. Go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead, very quick,
No,
because I got one
I
more
just want to
question I want
add,
to ask you.
I just want to add to that. So one of the things that we do in relationships is we ride the roller coaster of our partners or our loved ones, like moods and ups and downs. We're all growing different ways at different levels. And so I think if we can really just understand that people we're committed to, our job is to stand by their side and support them. It doesn't mean we have to have a bad day if they're having a bad day. It's really just being there for them. And that's in business too. You know, if you have a boss or you are the boss, you have good days, bad days. Everyone doesn't have to ride that roller coaster to try and act like they understand you. It's just support them. You know, it's trust enough that you know they're going to be there regardless of whether or not you understand and empathize on the same level of emotion. You know what I mean? So that's all. I just wanted to add that because you know we pressure ourselves so much to take care of everyone else, and all you know you got to take care of you. Then everyone else is taken care of.
I love it. And my last question is, in your bio you mentioned mom and foster mom, and I remember when we met, like I said, there was like this cute baby in the picture, and I was like, "Oh, I need to connect with Julieanne." That was weird. Like in all the networking room that we were, that's what caught my eyes. I just love children,
Yeah.
love babies. I'm just baby crazy. But so, mom wasn't enough. Like, why
Yeah.
foster?
So my husband and I both have stories from our backgrounds that made us agree, and we shared this with each other when we met that we both wanted to have one and adopt, and so we both completely different stories, but we both decided that adoption was something we wanted to do to give back and to help somebody. Um, but what happens is when you get into that world of giving and generosity and you start to connect with the need that is so significant, it doesn't stop at one. And so we have had 6 foster babies and
Wow.
helped to reunify some of them with their families. They're all like these big extended families to us now. We love them all so dearly. We adopted during the pandemic virtually, if you can believe what you can do these days because of the pandemic. But we adopted our almost 3-year-old during the pandemic. And then now I can't share details, but we do have an infant who was born during the pandemic, who's in our
Wow.
house. She's about to be 3 months old. So yeah.
That
So
says a
and
lot. It
it's
says a lot
the
about you,
hardest.
and yeah.
Yeah, it's the hardest and most rewarding thing that I've probably ever done. Much harder than business and definitely more rewarding than anything. So thank you
We
for
definitely
asking.
need to keep the conversation going in another time, because I think this deserves a part two. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Probably through my website, which is spellingitout.com. That's just like it sounds. Or they can email me spellingitout@yahoo.com, and all my social media and everything is there. So thank you so much, Simone, for having me on your amazing show. It's such a pleasure, and I can't wait to continue our conversations.
Same here, and make sure you reach out to Julieanne. Have a reach out to spellitout.com. The links on the social media and the website are in the show notes. And what I would love you to do, if you have listened to this episode, send a message to Julieanne and myself in an email, and let us know what has been one thing that you're taking from this episode. Let us know, because we had this interview. If you've been listening, if you are to this point, if you've been listening to this point, I assume that you enjoy the show, and so let us know. Want to know the impact that this conversation made in your life and what you are going to do about it. So, Julianne, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to keep the conversation going.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching or listening. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe right now. And I will see you next time for a brand new episode of Explode Your Expert Business Show. And always remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.